The desperate call, the distress beacon pierced through the cosmic silence like a dying scream. It originated from the Karathi mining colony on Kepler 442b, a world so rich in rare minerals that 3 different species had fought over it before the Galactic Council declared it neutral territory. Now that neutrality meant nothing as plasma fire rained from the sky. Mining overseer Velkor pressed his 3-fingered hand against the communication console, his feathers trembling with exhaustion. The Karathi were merchants and miners, not warriors. Their bodies had evolved for precision work in low-gravity environments, not combat. His large, multifaceted eyes reflected the burning structures visible through the command center's windows. "This is Kepler Mining Station 7 to any vessel within range," Velkor transmitted, his voice crackling through damaged equipment. "We are under attack by Zarathi raiders. Our defensive shields have failed. They are taking our people for their slave markets. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need immediate assistance. We have children here, families, we cannot fight them." The message repeated on all frequencies, standard and emergency channels alike. Velkor knew the odds were slim. Most civilized species avoided confrontation with the Zarathi Empire. They were brutal, efficient, and had built their entire economy on conquest and subjugation. The peaceful races of the galaxy had learned it was better to pay their tributes than risk their wrath. 3 star systems away, aboard the human exploration vessel UES Prometheus, Communications Officer James Park nearly dropped his coffee when the distress signal came through. The ceramic mug, decorated with a cartoon Earth and the words "World's Okayest Space Explorer," clinked against his console as he set it down and amplified the signal. "Captain Chen, you need to hear this," Park called out, his fingers already working to triangulate the source. Captain Sarah Chen strode onto the bridge, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. She was built like most humans who spent their lives in space, lean, muscled, and constantly ready for the next crisis. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes held the sharp focus of someone who had seen enough of the universe to know when something was genuinely wrong. "Put it through the main speakers," Chen ordered. The Karathi's desperate plea filled the bridge. Chen's jaw tightened as she listened to the fear in the alien's voice. She'd heard that tone before, during her time in the Mars Colonial Defense Forces. It was the sound of someone watching their world burn. "How far?" Chen asked. 18 hours at maximum burn, Captain," responded Navigator Lisa Wong. "But Captain, that's Zarathi space. The Council has standing orders for all vessels to avoid." "The distress call came from neutral territory," Chen interrupted. "That mining colony is protected under Galactic Council Resolution 2847. Any attack on it is a violation of interstellar law." Her first officer, Commander Marcus Webb, moved closer to her chair. "Captain, we're an exploration vessel. We have defensive weapons, but against Zarathi raiders, we'd need a full battle group." Chen stood up, her decision already made. "Open a channel to the Endeavor and the Horizon. They're both within communication range." "Captain," Webb lowered his voice, "those are science vessels. Combined, we have maybe 40 security personnel and whatever weapons the engineers have been tinkering with." "We're humans, Marcus," Chen replied, meeting his concerned gaze. "We don't abandon people who call for help. Not ever." Within an hour, 3 human vessels had altered course toward Kepler 442b. The UES Prometheus led the formation, flanked by the research vessel Endeavor and the colony ship Horizon. Together, they represented humanity's peaceful presence in this sector. Scientists, explorers, and families seeking new frontiers. They were not a war fleet, but they were human, and that meant something the rest of the galaxy had yet to fully understand. As the ships jumped to hyperspace, Chen gathered her senior staff in the briefing room. The holographic display showed everything they knew about the Zarathi. Bipedal reptilians standing nearly 3 meters tall, with natural armor plating and a warrior culture that valued strength above all else. "They're physically superior to us in almost every way," reported Dr. Amanda Foster, the ship's xenobiologist. "Stronger, faster reflexes, natural weapons in the form of claws and teeth. They evolved on a high-gravity world with numerous apex predators." "Sounds familiar," muttered Chief Engineer Robert Kowalski, earning a few grim chuckles from around the table. "The difference," Foster continued, "is that they never had to develop the same level of cunning and adaptability that humans did. They were already at the top of their food chain. We had to fight, scratch, and think our way there." "What about the Karathi?" Chen asked. What do we know about their defensive capabilities? Virtually non-existent, Foster replied. They're from a low-gravity moon with no natural predators. They developed intelligence and technology through cooperation and trade. Their idea of conflict resolution involves lengthy negotiations and compromise. The Zarathi see them as easy prey. Security Chief Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison spoke up. Captain, I've been running simulations with my team. If we go in guns blazing, we'll last maybe 20 minutes against a Zarathi raid fleet. But if we're smart about it, he pulled up a tactical display. The Zarathi are used to fighting enemies who either run or surrender. They've never fought humans before. You're suggesting we use unconventional tactics, Chen said, studying the display. I'm suggesting we fight like humans, Captain. Like the Deathworlders, they keep calling us behind our backs. The term hung in the air. Deathworlders. It's what the other species whispered about humans when they thought no one was listening. Earth, with its varied climates, natural disasters, diseases, and the constant struggle for survival that had shaped human evolution, was considered a death world by galactic standards. Most species evolved on peaceful garden worlds. Humans had evolved in hell and learned to thrive there. 18 hours later, the human ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. The scene that greeted them was worse than expected. 3 Zarathi destroyers orbited the mining colony, their energy weapons carving through structures like hot knives through butter. Smaller raiding craft moved between the surface and the destroyers, their cargo holds undoubtedly full of captured Karathi. They're taking slaves, Wong said quietly, her hands clenched at her station. Not anymore, they're not, Chen replied. Open a channel. All frequencies. When the connection established, Chen stood tall, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had made peace with whatever came next. Zarathi vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Prometheus. You are in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 2847. Cease your attack immediately and withdraw from this system. The response came quickly, the main view screen filled with the image of a Zarathi commander, his scaled face twisted in what might have been amusement. Humans, he hissed, his forked tongue tasting the air. The Deathworlders come to play hero. You are 3 small ships against the might of the Zarathi Empire. Turn back now and we may allow you to leave with your lives. I don't think you understand, Chen replied calmly. We're not asking. The Zarathi commander laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You dare threaten us? We are apex predators. We have conquered 40 systems. What can 3 human ships do against us? Chen smiled, and something in that expression made the Zarathi commander's laughter falter. You want to know what humans can do? Chen asked. We're the species that looked at the void of space and decided to live there. We split the atom because we were curious. We've had thousands of wars and we got so good at killing each other that we had to invent rules to make it sporting. We domesticated wolves, conquered every environment on our planet, and when we ran out of challenges there, we came to the stars looking for more. She leaned forward slightly. You think you're predators? We're the species that predators check under their beds for. Now you have 1 minute to begin withdrawal, or you'll learn why everyone calls us Deathworlders. The transmission cut off. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Chen turned to her crew. Battle stations. Let's show them what happens when you send an SOS to the wrong species. When predators protect, the Zarathi commander's response was predictable. Immediate violence. 3 destroyer-class vessels opened fire simultaneously, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness of space with deadly intent. But the human ships were already moving, executing maneuvers that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. Evasive pattern Delta 7, Chen commanded, gripping her chair as the Prometheus rolled hard to starboard. The ship's inertial dampeners whined in protest, but they held. Years of dealing with Earth's unpredictable weather patterns, from hurricanes to tornadoes, had taught human engineers to build ships that could take punishment and keep flying. The Zarathi weapons were powerful but designed for large, slow-moving targets that followed predictable flight paths. The human ships danced through space like leaves in a storm, using controlled chaos as a defense. Return fire, Chen ordered. Target their weapon systems. Morrison, deploy the surprise packages. From the belly of each human ship, dozens of small objects ejected into space. To the Zarathi sensors, they appeared to be debris or perhaps escape pods. The aliens ignored them, focusing their attention on the larger vessels. It was a fatal mistake. The surprise packages were actually modified mining drones, retrofitted with explosive charges and primitive AI systems. They drifted innocuously through space until they were within range of the Zarathi ships, then suddenly accelerated, attaching themselves to hull plates like metallic parasites. On the bridge of the lead Zarathi destroyer, Commander Vrax watched his tactical display with growing confusion. Why do they not flee? They are outnumbered and outgunned. His second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Thek, seemed equally puzzled. Their movements are erratic, Commander. Our targeting computers cannot establish a lock. Then use manual targeting, Vrax roared. They are only humans! The word only would prove to be the Zarathi's greatest miscalculation. Chief Engineer Kowalski had spent the 18-hour journey making modifications that would have horrified any safety inspector. He'd rerouted power from non-essential systems, overcharged the weapons capacitors, and removed every safety protocol the manufacturers had installed. Captain, I've got something special for them, Kowalski reported over the comm. Remember that mining laser we confiscated from those asteroid pirates last year? The one you said you'd disposed of, Chen asked, allowing herself a small smile despite the situation. I may have kept it for educational purposes. It's been modified. Fair warning, we'll only get one shot before it burns out half our power systems. Make it count, Chief. The Prometheus suddenly stopped its evasive maneuvers, presenting itself as an easy target. The Zarathi commander saw the opportunity and ordered all weapons to focus on the seemingly vulnerable human ship. It was exactly what Chen had anticipated. Now Kowalski, a beam of coherent light, originally designed to carve through asteroids, lanced out from the Prometheus. It struck the lead Zarathi destroyer's shield generator, overwhelming it in seconds. The beam continued through, carving a molten line across the ship's hull. Atmosphere vented into space and the destroyer listed badly to port. Simultaneously, the mining drones attached to all three Zarathi ships detonated. They weren't powerful enough to destroy the vessels, but they didn't need to be. The explosions targeted specific systems: sensor arrays, communication dishes, maneuvering thrusters. The Zarathi found themselves partially blind and struggling to maintain formation. Ground teams, you are clear for deployment, Chen announced. From the horizon, a colony ship that had been carrying families to a new settlement. 20 dropships launched, but these weren't filled with colonists. Lieutenant Commander Morrison had spent the journey training every human who could hold a weapon: scientists, engineers, even the ship's cooking staff. They might not have been soldiers, but they were humans, and that meant they could become soldiers when necessary. Dr. Foster was among them, her xenobiology expertise making her valuable for understanding Karathi physiology and treating wounded. As her dropship descended through the planet's atmosphere, she gripped her hastily issued rifle and tried not to think about how just yesterday she'd been cataloging plant samples. The dropships landed in the mining colony's central plaza, now scarred with weapons fire and littered with debris. Morrison's voice crackled through everyone's helmet comm. Remember, the Zarathi are stronger and faster than us, so we don't fight fair. Use the environment, work in teams, and for God's sake, don't try to be heroes. The first group of Zarathi warriors they encountered seemed almost insulted by the human presence. These weren't the massive warriors from their destroyers, but a ground force left to secure the colony. Still, each stood nearly 3 meters tall, their natural armor plating making them walking tanks. Humans, the lead Zarathi growled, its translator turning the guttural sounds into words. You dare face us in ground combat? We will tear you apart with our bear claws. Private Tommy Chen, no relation to the captain but coincidentally sharing her surname and her stubborn streak, raised his rifle. Yeah? Well, we've got something you don't. And what is that, little Deathworlder? Tommy smiled behind his helmet's visor. We've got nothing to lose and everything to prove. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for decades. The humans didn't fight the Zarathi on their terms. Instead of meeting them in open combat where strength and size mattered, they turned the mining colony into a nightmare of ambushes and traps. Engineers rigged mining equipment into makeshift weapons. Scientists used their knowledge of chemistry to create improvised explosives from cleaning supplies. The ship's chef, a man named Carlos who had served in Earth's military before retiring to space, taught the others how to use the colony's own infrastructure against the invaders. The Zarathi, for all their physical superiority, had never faced an enemy like this. Their previous conquests had been against civilized species who fought with honor and accepted defeat when overwhelmed. Humans didn't accept defeat. They just got creative. Morrison led a strike team through the colony's maintenance tunnels, emerging behind Zarathi positions to strike and disappear before the aliens could respond. The Zarathi's size, such an advantage in open combat, became a liability in the confined spaces humans forced them into. Meanwhile, in space, the battle had taken a turn the Zarathi hadn't expected. The two remaining functional destroyers found themselves facing not just 3 human ships, but something far worse. Human improvisation. Captain Chen had ordered the release of everything they had. Mining probes were reprogrammed as suicide drones. Communication satellites were turned into kinetic weapons. Even the ship's waste disposal systems were weaponized, creating clouds of debris that fouled the Zarathi's remaining sensors. They fight without honor, Commander Vrax roared as another explosion rocked his ship. No, his second-in-command said quietly, watching the tactical display with something approaching respect. They fight to win. Back on the surface, Dr. Foster had established a triage center for the rescued Karathi. The mining colony's survivors looked at their human saviors with a mixture of awe and terror. One of them, a young Karathi engineer named Selek, approached Foster as she treated a wounded miner. "You are the Deathworlders," Selek said, his feathers fluffing in what Foster recognized as nervousness. "We heard stories, but we did not believe. We're just humans," Foster replied, checking the miner's vital signs with equipment she'd modified to work with Karathi physiology. "Just humans?" Selek's large eyes reflected confusion. "You fight the Zarathi. You make them flee." "No one makes the Zarathi flee." As if to emphasize his point, an explosion echoed from across the colony where Morrison's team had just collapsed a building on top of a Zarathi patrol. "We don't like bullies," Foster said simply. "Never have." The tide turned decisively when the Zarathi commander made a critical error. Frustrated by the human resistance, he ordered his warriors to take hostages from among the Karathi survivors. It was a tactic that had worked countless times before. Civilized species would always negotiate for innocent lives. But Vrax had forgotten he wasn't dealing with a civilized species by galactic standards. He was dealing with humans. When the images of Zarathi warriors holding Karathi children came through, something changed on every human face. The playful creativity of their resistance transformed into something darker, more primal. Earth's history was written in the blood of those who had threatened children. Captain Chen's voice came through all channels, cold as the void of space. "All units weapons free. No quarter." What followed was not a battle but a demonstration. The humans stopped playing with their food. The modified mining laser, which Kowalski had somehow managed to repair despite his claims it would only fire once, carved through another destroyer's engines. Morrison's ground teams stopped using non-lethal capture techniques and began employing the full arsenal of human military, history from ancient ambush, tactics to modern psychological warfare. The Zarathi had evolved as apex predators on their world, but humans had evolved on a world where everything, from the smallest virus to the largest predator, from the weather to the very ground beneath their feet, had tried to kill them, and humans had not just survived, they had conquered. Within 6 hours of the initial engagement, 2 Zarathi destroyers were disabled and drifting, their crews either dead or surrendered. The third fled the system at maximum speed, its commander broadcasting warnings to the Zarathi Empire about the Deathworlder madness. On the surface, the remaining Zarathi warriors had either been eliminated or had done something unprecedented in their species' history. They had surrendered to a physically inferior enemy. As the dust settled, Captain Chen stood in the mining colony's command center, surrounded by grateful Karathi and her exhausted but victorious crew. The colony's overseer, Velkor, approached her with what she had learned was the Karathi equivalent of tears streaming from his multifaceted eyes. "You came," he said simply. "We called for help and you came." "That's what humans do," Chen replied. "But why? You didn't know us. We had nothing to offer you. The Zarathi could have destroyed you." Chen looked around at her crew, scientists who had become soldiers, explorers who had become protectors, ordinary people who had done extraordinary things because someone needed help. "On Earth we have a saying," Chen said. "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. We heard your call for help. Doing nothing was never an option. Wrong. The aftermath of what became known as the Kepler incident sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Galactic Council, which had long debated how to handle the human question, suddenly found themselves dealing with a species that had single-handedly stopped a Zerathi raid with 3 non-military vessels. The Zerathi Empire, for its part, officially declared human space off-limits to their raiders. The economic loss of 3 destroyers and the blow to their reputation as invincible warriors was too great to risk. Another encounter with the Deathworlders. But perhaps the most significant change came from the other peaceful species of the galaxy. The Karathi, the Altarians, the Zenthran, and dozens of other races who had lived in fear of raiders and pirates suddenly had a new option. When they sent out distress calls, they began adding a new phrase to their transmissions, calling any human vessels in range. Because they had learned something important about humanity. Yes, humans were Deathworlders. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they fought without what the galaxy considered honor or proper rules of engagement. But they also answered every call for help. Every single one. Captain Sarah Chen received numerous commendations and offers of position from both human command and various alien governments. She turned them all down, choosing to remain on the Prometheus. When asked why, she simply said, "There are more calls out there. Someone needs to answer them." The galaxy had learned that when you send an SOS to the wrong species, the Deathworlders, the humans, you don't get a measured response or a diplomatic solution. You get something far more terrifying to those who prey on the weak. You get protectors who don't know how to quit. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, on 100 different worlds, children who had once cowered in fear at the mention of raiders now slept peacefully, knowing that if the worst happened, if the monsters came, they could call out into the void, and the Deathworlders would answer.